Welcome to CITE Career Connect with Kate. My name is Kate Whitfield and I'm a principal with Alta Planning and Design in Ottawa. So the goal of each and every episode is to help people looking for jobs in Canada in the field of transportation, engineering, and planning. So in this episode, we took a little bit of a different spin and we start with someone that was in episode 1. So Selina talks about getting a job and what it's like a year later. And then we dive into a group of guests looking for jobs. And then it's a fun sort of roundabout discussion of asking questions of what it's like of someone that's sort of newer in the field, about networking, about onboarding, the usual software questions. So here we go for this episode. Let's get started. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We're going to start this episode hearing from Selina. So Selina was featured in the first episode, July 2020. At the time, Selina had recently graduated from the University of Calgary with a bachelor's degree in civil. She now is an EIT with urban systems in BC. So we're starting with a different way. Selina, I'll pass it to you. A short story maybe on leaving Calgary and where you work today.
Perfect. Thank you, Kate. So as Kate had mentioned, I am a 2020 civil engineering graduate from the University of Calgary, and I currently work at Urban Systems in Vancouver. I graduated during the pandemic, and it wasn't a fun time to graduate then or this year. And I didn't have a job lined up. So I spent last summer looking for a job, networking and trying to use all the resources that I could to try and find some kind of engineer and training position. So I got really lucky in September. I got an environmental position at a consulting firm in Vancouver. It wasn't completely aligned with what I was looking for, but it was a good opportunity. And so I took it because I was eager to work, and it still was a good opportunity. I spent a few months in this role, and after 2 or 3 months, I very quickly realized that it wasn't a great fit for me, and it didn't particularly align with my career goals and what I had graduated with, which was a civil engineering degree. So I went back into the job hunt mode, and I continued to network and just make connections and try and ask professionals about the position that I'm in and what they thought of it. I got really lucky then in March of this year. One of my connections had actually, it kind of worked out, and she was looking for an engineer in training at Urban Systems. And so I got lucky and got that position. And so I've been in this position for almost 6 months. It's a better fit for me and so far, and it's definitely a lot more aligned with my career goals. So that's kind of been the last year and a half. I can elaborate more as the episode goes on. But yeah, thank you.
That's great. And Selina, you were willing to do the first episode when we tried this little Career Connect thing out, and you were awesome. And here you are, you appeared again. So just willing to talk and share stories. So thank you. So we'll come back around. But now we'll switch over to the job seekers. We're just going to do our quick sort of 2 minutes each to introduce so that we can get going. So Aarzoo, I'll go to you first. A graduate, right, from Carleton University, so in Ottawa with me, MEng in civil engineering and a major in transportation planning and engineering, traffic engineering. So I'll pass it over to you for your introduction.
Thank you, Kate, for inviting me and for this opportunity for tapping. So I'll just say a few words about myself. I'm Aarzoo. I recently graduated in 2021 from Carleton. My majors is in transportation engineering. I took a lot of courses in transportation and performed some of the case studies, but soon I realized I wanted to do something different, and I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to work on a real-time project to build Ottawa's downtown and centertown traffic model. And my professor wanted to build me an accurate model where I could calculate the delays and the congestion, and the most important thing about project was the COVID data. Since it's the pandemic, people are commuting less from their homes, so it has a lot of impact on traffic. So I performed different simulations, collected data, and it was a really Herculean task, but I got to learn a lot from the project on a practical base. And as other than academic from this project, something I learned was have to communicate with the city, collecting data, analyzing it, and putting the knowledge to the best use. So when I graduated, I was proud of something that this project was very useful for me, and I got to learn a really good software, and it was really a fruitful thing. Thank you.
Yeah, and when I met you just recently, I love that you said I wanted more for my master's, so I went and did something about it. That's what I remember about our call. What a wonderful thing, right? So we just have to show employers that initiative that you took. That was really awesome in that city project. So we'll pass it over to David. David has a master's in civil engineering from U of A and is on the executive of the U of A student chapter. But I will say, I try to personalize this. David was at the CITE virtual conference and wrote me a message saying, I'd like to be on Career Connect. So again, that's, an offer's out there. You took it. You said, I want to do this. That's the kind of stuff that will help make a difference. Even if you do it your way, that's awesome. So I'm glad that you're here, David. So I'll pass it to you for your introduction.
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Kate, for having me. And yeah, that CITE conference was a great experience. I was really thrilled to have the virtual conference this year. I was lucky enough to go to the event in 2019 in Ottawa, and that really, kicked off kind of my networking flow and meeting people and launching my career in transportation engineering. And then when the pandemic came, we lost that one in 2020, and 2021 was a great way to connect. So I'm glad I could reach out to you at that virtual conference. So yes, I've done my master's degree in transportation engineering, but my kind of unique background is I actually did my undergrad in chemical engineering, and I have about 5 to 6 years of experience within that field. And I kind of realized I didn't want to stay there anymore. I had to move on to something different. And I kind of had learned over those years about transportation as a field. And so I took the year to kind of revisit what I want to do, make an application to the U of A. And that was one of the best decisions I made to kind of re-envision my career where I wanted to go. And so with kind of my experience, I've got a lot of data analysis experience. So I challenged myself through my master's degree to do a lot of work using Python for analysis, learning different software within transportation, because I knew I had to kind of get more within this new field beyond just theory. I needed to get skills, I needed to get software experience, I needed to get kind of a broad coverage to kind of relaunch this new field for me. So that's where I'm at.
We love it, and we love people working in the field that they have a passion for, right? So far we've gone Vancouver area, then we went Ottawa, then we went over to Alberta. Now we're going to Halifax, I think, Fatou. So if I have it right, another degree in civil engineering, but more of environmental sort of site remediation side. You had reached out to me on LinkedIn. So I'm excited to have you here too, but yeah, representing a little, maybe some Dalhousie University time, right? So I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for the opportunity. As Kate mentioned, I am an environmental engineer in training. So my experience is not very specific to transportation. However, throughout my education and professional career, I've had the opportunity to work in different sectors and diverse projects within the industry. So just to name a few: water resources management, impact assessment, risk assessment, sustainability. But one of the most interesting projects that I worked on was with Halifax Water. So it was on a contamination remediation project, and it involved a small community in Nova Scotia whose groundwater supply was contaminated with arsenic, and the municipality had to truck in water daily. So this was also an additional concern because it was contributing to the environmental footprint. So I worked with a team and we successfully designed a treatment system that would remediate the arsenic and provide safe drinking water for that community. So that project involved data analysis, use of maps, and collection of water samples to identify the source of contamination, used AutoCAD to design the entire treatment system, which was very cool. We also conducted a phase 1 impact assessment, looked into permit applications, did budget estimates, return on investment. So it involved a lot of aspects, just that one project. So it was one project that I really enjoyed working on, and I developed skills by not only working independently because it involved that aspect, but working as a team. And I learned a lot from my team members.
Really great. And on LinkedIn, it says a certificate in women in leadership or science. So maybe we can come back to that later too. It was interesting to read your profile there. So our last job seeker. Now, don't worry, you're with a bunch of engineers, but I know you studied planning at University of Waterloo, but you were more than welcome here. There is no engineering bias, I promise, Yomna. So I don't know much about you because you were wonderful and agreed this morning to do this. So we have talked before, but you're wonderful just to say yes. It's another thing, just sure, I'll do this. So thank you for that. But I'll pass it to you because I don't know much about you yet to do your introduction.
Okay, thank you, Kate. So my name is Yomna. I recently graduated from University of Waterloo in urban planning. So I have specializations in land development and urban design, and I did a minor in business. So when I first got into planning, I honestly didn't really know what it was. I got shifted into it from architecture. I didn't like the career path for architecture, so I got into it and I thought, okay, another way to do design, but I learned that it was so much more. There's, policy, transportation, development, there's a lot more to it. And I got interested in a lot of, in the vast variety of fields. And so my main interest now that I'm graduating is really policy, and then using like urban design principles to implement these policies and make change to the urban form, and really looking at things from like a transit oriented perspective and how people would move around in the area that you're redesigning or redeveloping. And that's mainly where my interest is. I did have multiple co-op experiences in the public sector and private sector. I worked in Singapore doing research with the university there. So actually learning a lot about their transit system and going to a lot of different countries in Southeast Asia and comparing and stuff. And honestly, bringing all of these international perspectives back into here and reflecting on the difference and things like that was a really cool experience. Right now, I actually work for the municipality of Leamington as a coordinator of development approvals. So when anyone wants to develop something, I kind of look through the application and help process it, and with all the development agreements and stuff. And Leamington is very different than all of my other experience because it's very agricultural based, but it's also been extremely interesting to learn about the sector that I had no idea about before. And that's really as short as I can do it for right now, but it's really nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I didn't know what planning was either when I did my master's in it. I was in class like, what is this thing? Yeah. And then starting a career in development approvals, a lot of people do that. It's an awesome path to stay on. It's not like everybody leaves it, but it also is a really fundamentals, right? So it's a great place that you're in. That's great that you're working in Leamington. So Selina, you've heard this go around. I'm going to come to you for just pick one sort of tip around or reflection on now that you work in the field. Okay, and then while you do that, maybe people can think of what question they want to ask. If you don't have any, I'll come up with more, I promise. So Selina, I'll go to you first, just with some maybe reflection on now that you're working.
Yeah, this is going to sound very generic, and I'm sure you have all heard it many, many times, but just the importance of networking and making as many connections as possible. Whether it's doing sessions like this, or honestly just cold messaging people on LinkedIn, or even within your own company, continuing to make those connections within your own company, and sending messages to people you haven't met yet. I've definitely learned how important that has been, and it has definitely tested to be true, as to how important and how it can really help you shape the career that you want to go into. Another thing that I've kind of learned, and just kind of like hearing about your guys' background stories, is that not all careers are linear, and that it is totally okay to have a zigzag kind of career path. And that's something I've definitely learned this past year and a half, is to be okay with that, to be okay with trying something, but then realizing it's not something that I want to be in, or it's something that is not what I expected. And then trying to figure out what your next move is. It's something I was scared about after graduation, but I'm definitely a lot more comfortable, and I accept it now. So yeah, I think those are the two biggest tips or learnings that I've learned this past year and a half, is the importance of networking and being okay with making changes when you're unhappy, and because you'll thank yourself when you find something that you're happy with.
Yeah, and I'll add to it too. Selina was in the first episode, was able to make a short story out of her undergraduate project, and I actually had peers from other companies and their HR department comment on her. So it's communication in a short split. It didn't work out, right? You didn't get that job. So what, right? Like, but that was still a learning thing. But Selina, I'm sure after your episode, you were contacting a whole bunch, and you got a lot of nothing and a lot of something that turned into nothing, and then something worked out, and then like even that experience the first time probably paid off in your moving over now, right? And then even now, right, you've been there since March, you're building your own network and learning in another firm, right? And trying to figure it out,
Totally.
4 months in, 5 months in, whatever it would be. So it's pretty awesome, but it was about figuring out how to pitch yourself, but that confidence, and all of you speak with confidence right away from your 2 minutes, which is fantastic, because that's right part of the battle here too, is just trying to make an impression. So does anyone want to ask either me or Selina or each other a question? Just if you want to unmute. David, we'll go to you first. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'd like to ask a question of Yomna. So Kate mentioned that I'm kind of an executive of the ITE chapter at the U of A, and ITE is, not just for engineers. And so I latched onto your talk about being in the planning program, and I've been reaching out to our planning students here as well. But often, these two are very much silos, especially at the academic level. And so my experience is I reached out to our planning groups about, taking courses in that area to kind of broaden my experience. So I might ask you, Yomna, like what about planning do you think kind of overlaps with the transportation area? Because planning is more than just, that specific transportation. And so what suits you, and what do you like about this transportation planning?
I guess to answer your first question of what I feel, overlaps, it's land development, really, because those courses talk to you about how, the process of getting things built and getting land developed. And so transportation is a big part of that, because as we review applications, we look at, okay, well, where's your traffic impact study, how is the land going to go within the subdivision, or how are people moving within this condo application, things like that. And so when you understand transit alone, and then when you look at master planning courses or transit-oriented courses, urban design, land development, you start to see how transportation fits within that, and then really seeing the big picture. I think that's what planning has taught me the most, is looking at the big picture and understanding everything as a whole. And especially, again, from a policy perspective, really understanding the process legally and things like that, I think is the biggest hurdle we face with consultants, where they don't understand the process. And I feel like if you're working in the private sector, understanding the public sector process, understanding the legal side of land development will really help you as an engineer, as a planner, as whomever, and speed up your projects. And so those are the main connections I can see. I'm sure, Kate, you have more to add.
You hit so many good things in there. So these tapings always go to traffic impact studies, because that's a very typical job. So what is a traffic impact study? It gets submitted to a development approval person that either might not even care about the technical side of it. I'm not saying you don't, but right, it might not be their thing. Right? They might be accepting it with everything else they need for the development application, and their job is the process, the steps. Someone else is saying if it meets the requirements, maybe, maybe not. So that's really neat. You said a lot of great things in there, right? About understanding why, about process. So you also said sort of the legal side. You might not be able to ask the developer to do that thing you want, even if you want to. It's like the authority to require. So there's a lot of cool things in what you talked about there. I also think David's question had a hint at how to get you to join CITE as a member, so that planners and engineers are together and feel welcome. I think that was really fun way of asking that, and also yeah, how to help you in your career, right? Because there's so many organizations for you too, Yomna, like your own provincial authority for professional planning, and then national. Yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff in there. Anyone else want to ask? Yomna, do you want to ask something? Or
no, I'm going to tell David I'd love to connect with you afterwards about speaking on how I can join CIC and more afterwards. But thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Selina, I'm going to go to you with another question, but I still want to encourage others to ask their own. What did the companies communicate about software expectations, and or did they train you? Everybody asks this about software before joining a company. Do you have any stories about starting and then training in software? And if not, that's just also might depend on what you're doing as a job.
Yeah, totally. I guess in general, the onboarding process was very different when you're onboarding during COVID. It's everything about it is different from when you would have onboarded pre-COVID. But in terms of software, so the biggest software programs that I've been using so far at Urban have been just general AutoCAD and PC Swim, which is the stormwater modeling software. And I was very honest with Urban Systems. So my environmental role didn't have too many softwares that I needed to know about. But coming into Urban, I was honest in saying that I didn't learn AutoCAD very well in university. It wasn't something that was taught very well. I had one course on it, and it was very briefly taught. So I was very honest about that with Urban, and they had understood that and had the appropriate kind of tools to help their new EITs smoothly transition into using AutoCAD, just because it is an important tool with any kind of design. So that was probably the biggest learning curve my first months, and even now is just continuing to ask questions, but also it's also been nice that the project managers and other EITs understand that CAD wasn't something that I came in with a strong I wasn't the strongest at it, so that was great. PC Swim is also another modeling tool that I use, and that's something that's also been is being taught to me, and is something that I'm getting taught right now.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. I love it in your answers, the honesty, and then is the faith in the system that you'll be trained. And then you said the famous line, which is ask questions, right? So no, that's really great.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to ask a question? See if you unmute. Fatou?
Yes, I had two questions. One was the one that Kate asked in regards to software learning, and the other one is in regards to your previous role as an environmental engineer. So, given that my background is environmental engineering as well, and I've heard like people, so civil engineers, talk about how it can be easy for environmental engineers. Maybe not easy. Easy might be too extreme of a word, but to integrate into a civil engineering role, and the same thing as a civil engineer integrating into an environmental engineering role. So what was it specifically that you didn't like about that environmental engineering position that made you think, okay, this is not it for me?
Yeah, no, totally fair question. And I do agree there was overlap in that in my civil engineering undergrad, we did a lot of environmental courses. So there was that overlap for sure. I think specifically, so what I was in was the remedial contaminated sites type of work, like that you're interested in. And it was a very cool position. I think what didn't align or what didn't fit for me was it was very field heavy. And what I was kind of looking for was more of that technical design work. Um, in my past internships during school, I had done more of that design work at Stantec as an intern, and that's something that I wanted to continue doing, more municipal or land development design work. So that was the only thing for me, was that the environmental work was very field heavy, and I just wasn't getting that design component that I was passionate about during school. So that it's just differences. There was another civil person that was working with me, and she loved the field work, and she loved the work that she was doing in environmental. So that was a perfect fit for her, but for me it was just that point there that I felt like I was missing.
Great answer, because some jobs are knowing procedure, data collection, loving, like hitting exact on what you need to do for logs and records and like in the field and paperwork, but it might not have a that design element, or it might not have consultation and more interaction with other people, which can be great, or not your sort of way you are, right? So that was fantastic, Selina. Like, and other people might find it exactly. It still has that love of maybe environmental protection and bettering the world, right? So you're like, oh, I'm happy here, I'm learning stuff, but it just doesn't fly with you, which is totally fine. And then sometimes you can move within an organization, right? So sometimes, depending on the firm, depending on your boss, a lot of things, you can move to another department, but it doesn't always work because it depends on their workload, their hiring, right? So sometimes it means moving another company, and then within companies too, right? Big ones, small firms, like Urban Systems has a certain culture that's pretty awesome, right? And it'd be a pretty awesome place to land for you, Selina. So that's really great. Yeah. Anyone else want to ask?
I would like to ask a question to Devin and Selina, as you guys shared experiences about software. So Sometimes I find that companies, sometimes they're flexible with these softwares, but sometimes I think they try to strict their content. So when they ask, let's say I have dug deep into Vism, so I see in the job posting they say, okay, knowledge of Vism, and they would say preferred experience in Synchro or Sim Traffic or other softwares. So like, how should I represent myself? Because from my side, I know as I could learn Vism in a month. So do I can learn Synchro because I'm interested to learn about it? So I'm just curious about how to represent yourself in front of that.
Yeah, so I'll respond to some of that. And yeah, like I mentioned in my intro, I wanted to learn, the tools needed for this new field for me. Um, and I see what you mean about all the different software types. And what I put on my resume is I'll be like, I'm fully fluent or high experience in this software. I'm comfortable in this. I've got introduction in this level, so I can kind of give some feedback on, how the level of experience I have. I do want to touch on, you mentioned about learning Vism. So my capstone project I wanted to learn Vism. That was my main motivation. I also wanted to learn about LRTs, so I kind of mashed those two together. And, I learned the basics of Vism within about a month. But then there's a giant well underneath that is going to be, used based on the need for your projects. There's a whole other areas of signal timing and more depth modeling that I didn't even touch because I didn't need it for my project. So I think it's just kind of also, once you know any of these kind of simulation softwares or Synchro or HCS, they're kind of translatable, and they might recognize that experience in one can translate to a preference. And so that's my opinion on learning these different softwares. And with Selina as well, I had one course in AutoCAD and it got interrupted with the pandemic. We were just starting up that portion of the coursework, was to learn AutoCAD, conduct a highway design, and then the next day we got notice, so we had to drastically shorten that portion of the course. We only had access to the software for a couple of weeks before we couldn't get to campus anymore. And so that's what I recognize on my resume when I talk to people. Is I got introductory level AutoCAD. I've watched some online training videos, but I can learn it. So that's my message when it comes up like that.
Thank you for sharing.
I would
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Kate. I would totally agree with David. And be honest. If you can get the software installed and you can learn it on your own, there are quite a few good kind of training videos you can find online and to get you to that introductory kind of position with some of these softwares. So I would definitely suggest that. But yeah, totally be honest. A lot of companies do realize that these softwares aren't taught in school or aren't taught to the same degree that they may need you to be at, and so they do recognize that, and a lot of the times they do assign other EITs to help you smoothly transition with those softwares.
And I'll just add, Synchro gets put there high on the list because that's what is most commonly used. Fine, but you want to know that you're type of thinker and wants to know how these things work. You want to know the variables. You care about saturation, like you care about every variable, because other brain types do not care, right? So I know I'm telling something a bit silly, because how do you really express that in a resume? But if I saw that you learned software for a class and learned it well, I don't think it matters if it's Vism or Synchro, because you could learn Synchro, because a lot of people have learned Synchro. So to say that it's impossible to learn would be a lie. But I'm more interested if that's what you want to be doing with your time, right? If someone just says to me, oh, I want to learn everything, then I don't learn anything about you, right? Like, because in the end, if you want to sit in your day at double screens, big screens in a CAD, designing a road, you have a certain style of how you like to operate every day. If you want to be modeling, you're going to like the details of that, because good modeler is paying attention to the city requirements and then also all the inputs, right? So that's what we're sort of searching. I know you and I've talked about this before. It's a bit vague an answer, but I think it comes out. And I think you can, like your city project with Ottawa and your Vism experience can really, we just need to let people know about it, right? And make it easy for them to understand. Awesome. So any other questions we want to ask? Yomna.
Sorry, I was just going to add something super quick to that on top of saying, you know, be honest, be honest. Like a really quick story, in my first year, I went to a job fair. I just went. I didn't even, you know, I saw the list of employers. I didn't know who they were because it was in first year. And it was all mostly engineering firms, but there was one civil engineering. And I was like, okay, I think I can make my way through this. And I just had a chat with them, and they weren't hiring co-ops. They didn't really even know what that was. And I just like chatted with them and whatever. And he was kind of interested, but he's like, you're in planning. I don't even. And I kept going, and I had a chat with the owner of the company on the phone a few days later, and he's talking about his company and he's talking about building sciences, and I just didn't say anything. And he's like, do you not know what that is? And I was like, no. But here's all the things that I can do for your company. I can make renders. I can pack up the file for your clients. I can do, you know, I can look at all the legal work. Like I just went on about what I know how to do and the software that I know, and then what I'm willing to learn within their process as well. And he was like, and I got a call later. It's like the fact that you were honest of what you knew and didn't know is what got you the offer. I didn't end up working there, but it was a really cool thing where I was like, honestly, no, I don't know what you're talking about, but let's learn about it and let's talk about it. And so another way you can bring the software stuff into this is really just saying like, well, here are the software that I do know and my level in them, and then how you can kind of provide a different type of service possibly, or how you can provide the service they're looking for through different methods. But yeah.
That's a great story. Fatou, you're going to add something there, or you had a different question?
No, I was just going to add something, but very similar to Yomna, surprisingly. And it was how I landed my first co-op job as well. So it was in like the renewable energy sector. And it was after my second year, I was much more quiet, struggling to integrate into a new environment. So I was not, like my communication was not as great, just that I wasn't as confident. So I had that co-op interview, and every single question that they asked me about the role, I would say, I don't know how to do it, but I'm willing to learn. So every technical aspect of the role, that was my response. So I left that job thinking that, okay, this is not it. I'm going to go and apply for another role because I didn't know anything. And surprisingly, I got the role, and right into like once I started getting into the role, knowing people, then they opened up about why I got the job. So they found that like my character and my personality was more in line with their company culture. So being honest about what you don't know and that you're willing to learn doesn't mean that you're not going to get a role. So I think that is a really great thing to keep in mind of.
That's great. Okay, so Selina, I'm sending one back over to you. Cold writing an email or a LinkedIn message to somebody. I always get this one. What's your favorite short message to get someone to respond?
Ooh, okay. Great question. I always, this is the one that I always send out either on LinkedIn or even internally now at Urban Systems as well. I always start off with, hi, so-and-so, I heard about you, or I viewed your profile on LinkedIn. And then I often specify what I found interesting about their LinkedIn profile or what I had heard about them. And I ask if we can have a chat, or via email or video chat, so that they can further elaborate on that specific experience or that specific job or whatever it may be. That often gets people's attention in terms of like, oh, she's not just asking me for a job, or she's not just asking me, you know, it's not, you're not directly, you know, trying to poach people. You're genuinely curious about what that experience was or what their job entails. And that often people like to hear that. People like to hear that you're interested in what they do. And that has always kind of led into a video chat. And then from there, you can carry on the conversation about their job, and then you can talk about what interests you, and then you can have a great conversation with that person and learn a lot. So that's my biggest advice for cold messaging or cold calling people is genuinely like look at their profile and see if there's something that interests you, and then point it out to that person and ask if they can elaborate. And a lot of people like that.
That's fun. Anyone else have a story or comment along that line about how to get a response? David, you've got, you know, you're a pretty good networker. I remember you now for a bit. So do you have any comments about that or how you get responses?
Yeah, so Selena's, you know, short, quick thing is pretty much what I do as well. Hi, I found you from this reason. This is what was interesting about you. Can we chat? And often with LinkedIn, you can't say much more than that. If you do an email message, I try to keep it to one line at most. Because I know I've been a working professional, and you get dozens of emails a day, and it can get overwhelming to respond to all of them, and keeping it short like that is what I would respond to when I was working previously. So that's what I try to do now. But I will reflect now that I kind of lost a lot of my momentum with networking when I couldn't, you know, do the let's meet for coffee as the next step. And that's a good point, Selina, about like let's meet for a video chat is kind of the new way of doing that. And there's a lot more maybe apprehension I've found around that versus a coffee chat. Yeah, that's been my experience, and I'm revisiting this whole plan now of networking and regrowing, and those short messages are very, very important to get people to respond.
Yeah, it's definitely short messages. I mean, Yomna, you wrote me 2 days ago or something, and you sort of said, this is my interest, this is why I'm talking to you, and then you kind of you nicely said, it's up to you, Kate, like when, right? And there is something about that too, right? How we communicate and when. I do try to respond to everybody, but that's also me in this initiative. But I've said it before, I don't like long write-ups. It does help you give me sort of a hint of what you need. But I also will say no, like I sometimes get, I'm a bridge engineer, or I'm something totally different field, and I'll politely say, I'm focusing my effort on transportation engineering and planning in Canada. That's where I'm giving my volunteer time. I have been doing that because it would be too much. But I also, and lately I've been doing this, I think I did this to you, Fatou, is I said, check out the videos first and then write me back. So I'm sort of saying, hey, put something in and I'll give something back. I probably did that. I do that to a few people now because these exist. But it's still, right, like it's okay to be not responded to, but you are looking for that way of getting a little bit of interest, right? And I mean, you've unmuted. Do you want to add to that? Do you have a thought?
No, I mean, I was gonna add to David's first point. Also, when Selina was talking about like how she messages people, and I'm like making sure it's the way I messaged you because I literally just did it the other day. I'm like, okay, good, I think I did that. But so David, I'm actually finding that having a virtual chat or asking for a virtual chat is so easy because personally, I hate phone calls. Like I can't talk on the phone. I don't know. I just feel like I need to see the person. And because I'm in every 4 months, I'm in a completely different city. I can't really, I don't even, like, I can't talk to people in person. Like, it's very, I've never actually asked someone to meet in person unless it's like someone at the university. So I found that once we all went online and that was the only option, people were just more receptive to it because that's how everyone's meeting anyway. So now I can talk with all of you and I can talk with anyone basically anywhere. So it's opened up more opportunities personally, I would say.
That's great. And the other part was just so messaging, the follow-up, and then also I talked about it with past people, like the maintaining the relationship or also letting it go. Like, it's okay for things to have their sort of expiry date. It doesn't mean they won't come back in your life later on, right? And yeah, it's just sort of part of those genuine connections. Sometimes you don't need anything from it. Steve talked about this at the conference one. Like, it doesn't have to have a commodity to it. They can just be a connection and then moving on. Anyone else want to ask another question?
I would just like to comment on what you said, Kat. Yeah, it's like really important. And it was a hard thing learning on LinkedIn that in your initial stages when you're texting people and it happens that you don't get replies. So there's nothing about to be upset because you need to understand people are busy and, it may take up to weeks. And I've seen that, being patient really helped a lot and not bugging people again and again because when someone wants to review your profile, they even get back to you in 2 weeks saying, okay, share me your resume and cover letter, or I'll forward it to the person looking at the application. So it's really a hard thing to learn, but once you learn it, it's really a good thing to stay positive and, going on with the job search.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to diminish the effort that this takes, and you're putting yourself out there. The other day I said to someone, it's also the person posting the job is also putting themselves out there, right? And investing in these relationships. So just the last part, sorry, Yomna, I see you have something.
I just had a quick question. So in terms of a follow-up message, what do you feel about that, I guess, personally? Like, if someone doesn't respond, I know, like, sometimes I just don't respond to messages or emails because I'm busy and I forget or whatever. And if I get a follow-up, I'm like, oh no, like, I want to respond to this person. But I don't want it to seem like it's annoying or repetitive, or like, how do you feel, I guess, timelines or...
Yeah, unless someone gave you an opening. Honestly, in a way, LinkedIn, if someone doesn't respond, you don't write a second time. That's kind of easier. But if they gave you an opening, there's a chance it's okay to sort of say, but we're talking a long time away. So yeah, maybe the easiest non-gray area is just you're out, right? Like that, you don't respond again. However, this is a line I say a lot. If someone offers you an offer of help or a connection, take advantage, like respond, right? You don't know where that will take you. From your story to with the building science, right? Like, it could turn into something. So the last part, I will say, just using the episodes. Even if Selina's is a year ago, I tell people, go back to the beginning. I had a friend say she learned some new things that it took her a while to click in, right? She said, oh, then she went back and she got what we meant by telling your story. Or now, if you see a job from a certain firm, figure out who it was on an episode, right? And go back. They still have value, the ones from through the year. And there's nothing wrong with a message that says, I'm on this episode, you're on this one. And connect with the job seekers as well as currently employed CITE members, because you never know where that connection will be in the future. But also, a lot of people did get jobs, right? And can give advice. Sometimes they might be at a firm in one province and have nothing to do with that in the other one, but who cares? They might give you a tip. Or a city job. I have to remember, it's not all firms, right? Like, the other day, someone got a job, a friend got a job at a city. They applied a year plus in advance. So not my sector, I've always been private, but city jobs can take a very long time. And then you get this phone call that says, hey, you made it to the next round, and you never know, right? So those sort of intros can also really help you down the road too if you pursue a municipal job. Well, you've all been really, really wonderful. I'll pause again just in case you want to ask a question, but that's part of the point too, is it's never over, right? We can keep having this conversation. Selina, you unmuted. Do you have something to add?
I just quickly wanted to add one thing about when you're networking, when you're doing those video calls with people. Definitely come prepared when you're going into some of these conversations. It makes a really big difference. The person on the other end definitely notices when you come prepared with just questions lined up or conversations that you want to have with that person. I think you benefit from that, and the other person, it also shows the other person that you take this seriously, and that it's something that you're not just kind of wasting their time. You've actually got genuine questions and curiosity about their experiences. So yeah, that's just a little side tip there. Just wanted to mention.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'll just do it again. Any remaining question? No, I mean, I see faces of people that are going to have already and will have awesome careers. So just to end on positive note there. So Steve, we will end the episode there. Thank you everybody for your time, and yeah, we'll watch when this gets posted.